Our next speaker is Braham Shnider. He is the founder of a company called Channel Enablers, which is now a division of Miller Heiman, the Channel Enablers division. He's the president of the Channel Enablers division, and it's probably fair to say if he is not the world expert, he is one of the 2 or 3 world experts in terms of building capability in organisations that market through channels. So welcome to the Miller Heiman family, and welcome to your first Asia Pacific Miller Heiman Summit, Braham. Clients in over 30 countries that he has personally served over the last 20-odd years. Most imaginable, or most brand names that you know in the information technology industry, Braham and his team have actually trained the channel management people. They use the Channel Enablers, channel management philosophies, processes, tools and methodologies. In short, what he's going to share with us over the next 40 minutes or so is how to go about building a world-class channel team. Ladies and gentlemen, Braham Shnider.
So, good afternoon, everybody. The topic that I'm going to talk about today is the professional development of your channel salespeople. So let's just get a little bit of nomenclature done so we're clear on what I'm talking about. When I say a channel or an indirect sales channel, I could be talking about someone who's a dealer or a distributor or an agent. Could be a broker. Could be one of many different types of, in the technology space, a value-added reseller is a term that's often used. When I talk about a channel manager, I could be talking about someone who's a channel manager, again, an agent manager, a dealer manager, a distributor manager, any name of roles. So I'm going to use the word channel manager. What I'm referring to is not somebody that sits inside of one of your channel partners. This is the person who's responsible for managing your channel relationships. And what I'm going to talk about today is what you can do to start to develop a world-class channel team. Why am I talking about this topic? Because this is all I've done for 12 years. I've had the benefit of working all around the world. This is actually my second trip to Sydney only in a couple of years. I've spent much more time in other countries, unfortunately, so I'm very excited about the actual opportunity to be presenting inside of Australia. But this is all I've done, and my team, for the last 12 years, is we have a whole curriculum, we have a whole competency, which I'm going to share with you, and competency was very hotly debated. What is a competency? Earlier on with David, we have a whole competency model. And our focus has predominantly been around with technology companies. Why, you ask? Maybe why did we start with technology companies? Because talking about change, Sam was talking about change earlier on. There's the most change that happens inside of a technology space. So once you try and, if you can satisfy any one segment, right, then the probability is outside of the technology sector, there's probably less change taking place. And so we've had a lot of success going into other markets such as financial services, agricultural products, industrial, test measurement, medical, instrumentation, etc. Because it's my belief, right, that the profession of channel management goes across industries in the same way that the profession of direct sales, enterprise selling, B2B selling goes across industries. Sure, you've got to have the industry expertise, no question. But the skill set is essentially the same. I wouldn't have been invited up here 5 years ago because 5 years ago, if you look at Miller Heiman's data or most of your data, probably 45% of you were only selling through indirect sales channels. If you look at Miller Heiman's data now, it's getting closer to 65% that are selling through indirect sales channels. That number is growing. It doesn't matter whose data you look at, the compound average growth rate for going through indirect versus direct in almost any industry is much faster. If you look at Accenture's data, they're telling you 65% of all sales out there are directly influenced or managed by channel partners. So I want to do another little experiment here again, if I can. So I'm trying to keep the energy going in this room. So I would like you to stand up, right? If there's an if, see some people are keen, right? I would like you to stand up if today you are using channel partners in any capacity of your business, or you are a channel partner. So the Miller Heiman consultants in the room, you're channel partners to Miller Heiman. So if you're thinking about using them or you are one, please stand up. Okay, so we've got about 2/3 of the room. Sit down 5 years ago, you were using channel partners. So we're starting to get half the room to sit down. So you also represent the same trend. I'm not going to go through all the reasons why this is happening, because I don't have the time available to do that today. There's a lot of economic and customer reasons why this is happening. But what I will do today is cover with you what you can do about it in terms of the professional development of your folks in this particular area. So the question I'm often asked when I talk on this particular topic is what are we looking for here? Why have a channel? Well, one of the things you've got to think about when having a channel, and we've heard the word behaviour spoken about a lot today. The one difference between a direct sales force and an indirect sales partner is one works for you, one doesn't. But ultimately, you still want to have the ability to be able to influence the behaviour of both. So what you're looking for is better focus, maybe in new markets. You want your partners to invest in new capabilities, those sorts of different things. So you're looking at trying to drive the focus and investment of your partners, right, so they get a return. I think, broadly speaking, you have two options if you have a channel partner on how to drive their behaviour. One is what I call programs. So, when I define a program, what do I mean? It could be a marketing program, a co-op program, it could be spiffs or sales incentives that you give to your channel partners, or maybe the reps inside of your channel partners. And depending on what sector you're in, some industries, certainly in the tech sector, they spend up to 3 or 4% of revenue. It's a contra revenue, so it's not OPEX, but they're spending up to 3 or 4%. It's our experience that about 25% of these programs have no behaviour change and there's no return to the partner. About 40% of these programs give a return to the partner, but there's no behaviour change in the areas that you want them to focus and invest in. So it's a viable strategy, but it's a very high-cost strategy as a high level of investment involved. The other way that you can really start to influence the behaviour, right, and the investment and the focus is how you engage with your channel partners. So at the simplest level, it's the engagement between your channel manager and the channel partner. In fact, it's more than that. When you think about channel engagement, there's a whole host of different things that need to be present. I'm not going to cover all of those today. There's not the time for it. But, the two areas that I'm choosing to focus on is what are the skills that you need in your people to become better channel managers, and what are some of what I call the most important field processes for them as well to make them highly effective. And so that's where I'm going to focus on. When I talk about partner engagement, I often get asked the question, what does it look like? What are some of the outcomes? What does it feel like? If you're a channel, has anybody here been a channel partner themselves once upon a time? So been a partner of someone else's, right? Right. So one of the things that you'll know, having been a channel partner, is that often you feel like your vendor, your supplier, your manufacturer, they don't understand you. They don't understand what's important to you. So at the most simplest level, what a successful engagement looks like is you have mutual understanding. And once you have mutual understanding, you have the real opportunity to be able to influence what it is that you would like your partners to do in a way that they want to be influenced. Your goals and your partner's goals can never be alike. They'll never be the same. Simplest example, your goal may be revenue growth. Their goal may be profitability. It's unlikely they're going to want to go revenue growth, with no profit to be generated. So, but the really successful partnerships have this ability to recognize that you do have different goals, and as a consequence of that, recognize the importance to one another and therefore align and put the appropriate resources in place. Other attributes of really successful channel engagement is as a consequence that you've got good understanding and goal alignment, you actually build plans with them. And there's one real big difference between doing, say, account planning if you're in direct sales and account planning in indirect sales, and that is you do something called a joint plan. And I'll talk a bit about planning later on. And so it's an added complexity. So you're not just planning on the channel partner, you're planning with the channel partner as well. There's measurement and reporting is respected. there's enablement and accreditation and training investment, and as a consequence, there's true teaming and communication. I talked about return on investment earlier on. How do you drive the ROI of this partner engagement? What are the things that you should be driving for? Well, first of all, you're driving to get the best partners. If you're in the financial services area, you want the best brokers. If you're in the technology space, you want the best integrators. So it's about getting the best partners. The second outcome is cutting time to revenue. The one thing that I constantly get asked is why does it always take longer to work through an indirect sales channel than it does to work through a direct sales channel? And the simple reason is because they don't work for you and you've got to influence them. But therefore the question is how do I collapse time? How do I collapse time where the partner says, yes, I'm going to do something to the point where you're generating revenue at a level that you've agreed and you want to agree on? So again, that's the type of thing that will drive the ROI. Most of you probably get, my experience at least is maybe 80% of your revenue from a small number of your partners, possibly 20%. You're probably getting 40 to 60% of your revenue from that mid-tier, and maybe 20% is generating nothing. So we have this notion called partner contribution rates. We've talked about A and B players all afternoon in direct sales. Well, this is your A and B players. Your A players are the 20% there. How do you find who are the next shining stars going to be from your B players before your competitors do? And that's what I mean. That's how you up your partner contribution rates. And maybe 70% of your revenue is coming from 30% of your partners. Absolutely mitigates a lot of the risk because you're not putting as many eggs into one or two or a few number of baskets. Other benefits is around investment. I often liken, if you're in the channel business, you're almost like you're chasing a venture capital company. Because if you think about a channel partner, you've only got so much money to invest. And you want them to invest in you. The more investment, if they're the right partner, the greater the investment you get in you, the better the outcome. It's actually a leading metric, and I'll talk about that a bit later on. So where do you want them to invest? Well, you want them to invest to become more independent. The worst sort of partners are the ones that are dependent on you. The best sort of partners are those that are independently capable of finding their own opportunities. They'll cross-sell, they'll develop their installed base, they'll do a better job of meeting customer needs. There's a lot of research that's been done around the world where you actually get higher customer satisfaction scores, depending on whatever customer measurement you're using indirect channels. And the fundamental reason is customers want partners to aggregate, their various needs. That's one of the reasons why they go, and that's why you get a higher score. And ultimately, it gives you the ability to plan and execute. So that's they're the sort of things that drive a return on investment. So where do you invest for this return on investment? So we did this research. We've done this research twice now. So this is a global research project that we did, and what we did is we broke into 3 parts of the world. So again, APJ standing for Asia Pacific, Japan, Americas, and EMEA, and Europe, and Middle East and Africa. And what we tried to do was, and we went to a bunch of these companies and a whole host of other companies that decided to stay nameless for this for various reasons. And what we want to do is we want to try and define, and I'm going to use the word competencies if that's all right, David, but we wanted to understand what are the 5, I call them professional competencies that you want your channel managers to do. What is best in class for your channel managers? So we came up with 5, and I'm going to explore what each of these different 5 are in a moment. Now, this is in addition to them knowing your company, knowing your product, knowing your industry, possibly knowing your channel programs and all the other things. What are the 5 areas of professional development that will really give you an opportunity to get some sort of unfair advantage? And the first one is partner lifecycle management. Simply put, it's about how do they manage their territory? What should they do in a programmatic way? The top 10% of channel managers out there know what to do. The next 80 or 90% generally don't. And so it's how you manage the territory. The second area is business acumen. Most channel partners, channel managers spend their time talking product, feature, your company, and therefore calling too low and aren't having the right business conversations that you need to do at a principal level. And I'll explore that. Partner influence is channel sales. I often get asked, is channel sales an account management or a relationship role or a selling role? It's a selling role. but you're not selling a product. You're selling change, we'll talk about change, and investment. And so that's what partner influence is what are we trying to change? What are we trying to influence in our partners? Planning and review is how you keep, again, the cadence in place. So influence is the skill, planning and review is the cadence, and leading and managing. We've talked a little bit about coaching today. Similar principles apply with your top channel managers. It's their ability to be able to coach partners to become more independent. So let's explore each of these a little bit. Oh, sorry. And the other thing that we do in the research, and this will have some relevance in a moment later, is we also ask them to rate how important is this attribute to the role. We ask them how well is it being executed, and as a consequence, we identify what was called an impact rating, so the delta between the two, meaning that the bigger the delta, the greater the opportunity for them to have some impact, particularly on trailing metrics such as revenue. So the first area I want to explore with you is partner lifecycle management. And the way I like to describe this is in the world of direct sales today, in the main, if you start to, if you have common nomenclature around things like funnel management, account management, opportunity management. Generally, if you say we want to generate a certain number of A-class quality leads, everybody knows what that means, or should know, at least, what it means. In the world of indirect sales, if I go to two different channel managers here, Bill here, right, and Rob there, and I ask you, we've got a new product we want to take to market. I want you to go and find me 10 partners who can sell this product, and I want you to find me 10 partners. I can almost guarantee you the type of 10 partners you're going to find is going to look very different to the 10 that Rob's going to find. And that's a market maturity thing. And so this whole concept of partner lifecycle management is how do you build something that's scalable? How do you build something that's repeatable? It's almost, what does a channel manager need to do when he wakes up on a Monday morning? What does he do on a Wednesday? How should he be reviewed? What are some of the leading metrics that they should be managed around? And the sorts of areas we're talking about is things like territory and market coverage. We're talking about partner selection, the way that you enable partners, pipeline management, etc. So I want to just give you a grammatic or sort of, and it's also, when you think about this too, it's not just the process, a lot of our clients, what we see is they have a tool here for selection and profiling, and they have an onboarding checklist over here, and it's just disaggregated. And the whole notion of this is to try and bring it into one seamless workflow where you've got integrated tools, it's integrated into your system, so it's integrated into something like Salesforce.com. It's training, it's measurement, and it's integrating all those different things. So let me give you a visual of it. To me, I think there are 5 parts, 5 stages to this partner lifecycle management. Some of these stages will vary in terms of emphasis, depending on whether you're in acquisition, whether you're in a retention sort of stage, growth, depending if you're going into new markets or not. But what the 5 areas are, the first question you've got to ask yourself, if you're a channel manager, is do I have the right capacity to actually meet my sales objectives? Now, capacity, that's not just number of partners by revenue and do some quick maths. Because most of you here sell many products. Does anybody here just sell a single product category? Not many. Most of you are across a range of products, which by definition means you may need a range of different types of partners. So when we define capacity, that's an interesting ringtone. When we define capacity, what I'm talking about here is what partners do we need by, however you segment the market, geography, industry, partner type, product set, solution set, what capacity do we need to make sure that we're going to get the revenue mix at an individual channel manager level that we're looking for? Once you've defined the coverage, you can then screen your existing partners for their ability to be able to be successful. What most channel managers do is you have 10, I go to Bill here and say, find me 10 partners. What he does is he just goes to his favourite 10 partners and puts every single widget that comes down the line through those same 10 partners, whether they're appropriate or not, because that's what he's comfortable with. So you've got to have a selection tool that gives you some science. See, where are you, Joe? I told you it was science, right? That gives you some science, right, around is this partner got the right capabilities or not? If not, it then links directly into your enablement. Because if you choose to engage with our partner, you've had a proper profiling exercise, you then know what the enablement gaps are. And so it then thinks about its linking right, the selection and process to how you're going to onboard and enable. It also allows you to identify where you've got capacity shortfalls or potentially too much capacity, and therefore gives you the opportunity to go out and find new types of partners. In the technology space today, there's a whole new space of partners. Gartner, this research firm in the US, has called them natives, is the term that he calls them. And there's sort of all these people that they call born in the cloud. And so a lot of these startup companies, particularly out of California, Northern California at the moment, what they're doing is they're finding a whole new set of different category of partners as they bring these new products out, because the segment's 25 years and below and things like that. So it's forcing a rethink. Once you understand the enablement gaps, then it allows you to manage them in three ways. There are three ways that you typically manage a partner. There's pipeline. If you know what the enablement gaps are, you know where your shortfall's going to be, so it allows you to be more proactive. It's what programs you want to promote to them, because it may well be, you've got lots of channel programs. You can't promote it to all your partners, and it's how you're going to plan with them, because that will influence your planning. And I'll talk about planning. And the last thing, too, is the way I like, you've got to do some transition management. Have any of you guys, the big airports we go to and they have these huge long conveyor belts, and I often say covering the market is, you've got to think about one of these long conveyor belts. And if you look at these long conveyor belts, they could go for 100 metres long. And if you want to cover the market, the way I describe it is maybe you want to partner every metre, 1 metre apart, so 100 partners to cover the market, gives you full coverage. If you don't transition partners in and out, what's going to happen? You're going to start getting a concentration of people at one end. Some partners will start walking backwards into other partners because, they're at the end of the line, right? They're no longer a productive partnership for you. They're only going to cause conflict, right? You're going to have other partners approaching them, no one coming in at the end, and you're going to have a concentration of partners in probably a sweet spot, too much concentration, and you're not getting account penetration into other segments. That's why you've got to have transition. So the first area is partner lifecycle management. The second area is most channel managers, again, these are generalization comments, love to talk about product, don't they? In fact, most salespeople like to talk about product. They often want to talk about your company, maybe your industry. And as a consequence, they often end up calling very low inside of your channel partners. Particularly if you've got very large, significant channel partners. They're not really calling it the CEO, CFO type levels. And the reason is because they're uncomfortable for doing it. They don't really speak the language of a CEO. They can talk your products till, you're blue in the face, but they don't have the comfort doing it. And frankly, nor should they in some respects, because on one hand, you've got a guy 6 years out of university here who's trying to sell, trying to have a business conversation with someone who's been in business for 30 years. It's not realistic. But what is realistic is they cannot mentor them, but they can have a genuine business conversation. And there's really two components to that. The first part is they need to understand how the different business models work of your partners. They're all going to be different. How your partners make money will be different in the type of industry you're in, the type of business they've got. Some of them will have a very important, annuity may be important to some, services may be important to others. It could be maintenance, if it's an industrial product, might be very important too. So there's a whole range of things that may be important to your partners. So your channel managers need to understand that. Once they understand that, right, then they're more likely to have an opportunity to be able to jointly evaluate investment options, because that's what you want them to do. No investment, no incremental investment from your partners only means one thing, status quo, which means you're only going to grow at market growth rates. So you want, presuming they're the right partners, you want them to invest. So it's the ability to be able to have that conversation where you can jointly evaluate, use things like return on invested capital and those types of principles, and have those types of conversations. Just as business acumen is very important, again, in the direct sales world, it's equally important here. But the discussion, the business models are different. Because it's not about how your customers, make money and having those types of discussions. It's about how your partners, in this case, make money. It allows them to establish peer-to-peer relationships ultimately. It allows them to sell profits, not products. How do you develop this skill in your people? Well, there's two things to it, I believe, to develop this skill. The first is they've got to have a common baseline of financial acumen around how your partners make money. The second thing is they've just got to practice. This is a role-play type exercise. This is where maybe as the more senior person, as their manager, sits on the other side of a table, plays the role of the channel principal inside of your channel partner, And they practice having these types of conversations. Because if they don't have these conversations, who ends up having the conversations? You guys do. And that doesn't scale. And so it's all about trying to introduce scale. So that's how, there's a lot of role-playing is the only way that you can introduce this. You can't do this live with partners. You can't practice live. So it's the only way that you can introduce it. Once you understand, once they've got the acumen in place, once they understand how to manage the territory, what I call the life cycle, the next area is influence. And I said earlier on that channel people are salespeople. I hate it when they're called relationship managers or account managers, because I don't think that's true. Because that implies, right, that there's no link to revenue. There's every link to revenue. But what are the things that they sell? What they're selling, as I said, is they're selling change and investment. A great question you could ask a channel manager, right? Anybody here got channel managers reporting to them? Just a show of hands. Not many, okay. Well, a question that is often asked, right, that I recommend that you often ask, right, of your channel managers is what change objective do you have for this partner? And they'll sort of look at you with this blank face. Why would I have a change objective? Well, are you happy for them to grow at 3% if the market's going to grow at 3%? No, we're targeting to grow at 10%. So what are you going to do different from a previous year? It's a change objective. So influence is all around trying to sell change. It's trying to sell investment. So there's the normal things like questioning, listening, building value early on, dealing effectively with the different types of stakeholders inside of your partners than inside of a customer. It's about understanding how decisions are made, and it's gaining commitments to and resolving the sort of concerns that your partners may have. Again, they're going to be different, and it's fundamentally it's identifying these change objectives. And the way I want to try and demonstrate this to you is we have this thing called the partner influence process, and the notion of it is that it's about trying to, as I said, drive a change objective. So if you think about if you're a partner today, right, this is sort of the process that you would go through to make a decision. First of all, you've got to be aware, there's an awareness of need to make a change. So, one of the things that Sean and I were talking about last night was, and you shared this up here, so I'm not sharing anything confidentially, is, in the Canon business, right, in the business, printing business, I think it's called, they want to move much more from a capital sale where they're selling printers to more of a services sale where you're buying it per page, right? So that's a major change objective. Right? Some of their partners don't even realise there's awareness for change. That's part of the problem. So so first of all, the partner's got to be aware, right, that there is actually a need for change. Then they can explore their options, the implications of doing nothing, the implications of doing something, and they go and make their decisions. What you as a channel sales professional need to do is there's a level of opening and approach. There's some credibility building. I remember, Sam, you spoke about the 15-minute conversation with the $2.5 billion EBITDA company. It's no different with a channel manager. In the first 5 minutes, you've got to be able to establish that credibility with your customer. But it's not going into presentation mode after that. It's then spending time around understanding what it is, what's important to the partner, and building that value awareness for change. So if they do want to move into more of an asset sale to a services model, right? What's the process? How are you going to build awareness? How does an annuity model benefit them from making just margin on product? And then ultimately it's presenting, and you've got to know, we'll talk a bit more about coaching later on, but you've got to know when to coach, when to sell, and when to manage. So influence is the sales process that you follow, right, if you're in channel sales. Acumen is really where the knowledge is. Partner lifecycle management is around how you manage the territory. Planning is just as important in the indirect world as it is in the direct world. The one difference is you have this thing called a joint plan. Good channel reps know just as well as good direct reps, right, the importance of planning. When we did this global research, so I talked about earlier on about this global research. So again, what you have here is the different circles represents the 3 different parts of the world. So we're part of the Asia Pacific and Japan region here. When we did this research, we asked 28 questions around what are the most important things you want your channel managers to do. And clearly, if you look at the middle, joint planning and identifying the effective elements of plans came out as number 1 in terms of importance. What was also interesting, if you look at it from an impact rating, so now you're looking at how well is that thing that's so important being executed, right? Again, still drive joint planning, and if elements of effective partner planning still come there. So not only is it really important, but many of your peers and other companies have said this is the one area, if we just get one thing right, this is the one area that would have the greatest revenue impact with our partners. So planning is clearly very, very important. When we think about partner planning, we often say there are 5 stages to partner planning. There's the profiling. So it's finding out what's important to the partner, understanding what their growth objectives are. It's not about coming in and telling them to the partner what should be important to them. It's finding out what's important back. You know, if you're a public company, it's, you know, going to the analyst reports and all those sorts of different stuff. It's profiling. It's understanding the issues and objectives. It then gives you the opportunity to qualify them in or out. If you've done your enablement profiling earlier on, you'll already know what the enablement gaps are in terms of qualification. So then you can build what I call your internal plan. What does success look like for this partner a year or 2 from now? Forget about talking about just customers, right, or even customer segments. What are the things that we need them to change and invest in? Once we understand that, right, then you can have a joint planning session with that partner. And what you can do in that planning session when having the partner is you say, we understand this is what's important to you. We've thought about it, right, and these are some of the ideas we have. What do you think? As what often happens is we'll tell you what's good for you. It's not a very good outcome if you're a partner. And then there are some other steps that follow. We often get asked to come into companies and say, can you really take a look at our high achievers, you know, A players as it's often been called today. Look at our A players and what is it that they do that we could really apply to our B players to really get them to really lift our game. And not surprisingly, it's, you know, it's the ability of a channel manager to be able to coach what we call independent partners as opposed to dependent partners. So I know that coaching was, you know, introduced briefly by David before. What most channel managers do is facilitate. So, you know, you want some information, come to me. You want to speak to someone, let me help you. They don't often lead. They don't often, they certainly don't often coach, and there's probably not much opportunities for mentoring. So what do I mean by coaching in this situation? So this is very field applicable. It's the ability for partners to solve their own problems. So the problem with this statement is, you know, if you have a problem, give me a call, creates dependency. If your channel manager is making a statement like this, right, then what's happening is that channel manager can never scale themselves because every time there's a problem, they're going to go to them. What can I do to help? Right, very subservient. Are there any more resources you need from us? Well, there's always more resources, Mr. Channel Partner. We'll keep giving them to you if you keep asking us. Right? Rather than saying, what resources do you need or will you commit to, or what resources will you need to commit to do something with us? Or something like, you know, what are your options to address this? The most common problem that you have with channel partners is lack of pipeline. And so, you know, and the worst type of response could be a channel partner coming up to a channel manager and says, hey, Mr. Channel Partner, I haven't got enough pipeline. Can you go and generate some leads for me? And the channel manager goes away and generates some leads. Well, guess what happens? There's no independence there at all. It's complete dependence. What the channel manager should have said was, what have you done in the past? What's worked with you? What hasn't? What have you done with your other manufacturers or vendors? You know, what's successful? What have you learned? What hasn't been successful? And letting them help find their own answers. And once they do that, then apply some resources if that's what's needed. But don't give them the answer. In the same way that a field manager in a direct sales team, you know, needs to let their salespeople find their own answers, the same principle applies, you know, with your channel partners. And these are the most common areas that we call field coaching opportunities that you have with your channel partners. Pipeline, chasing the wrong opportunities. We've heard a lot about, you know, your direct sales teams chasing the wrong opportunities. Well, there's no value in your indirect partners chasing the wrong opportunities also because, you know, if they're going to waste cycle time, there's no benefit to you. Greater opportunity to leverage some of the best practices you have, you know, improve sales skills, etc. You know, the ability to work better with your client-facing or your direct sales teams. These are all opportunities for coaching improvement. And so the really, really high-performing channel sales professionals really have this ability to be able to help partners solve their own problems and therefore build real scale inside of their partnering ecosystem. So I want to just give you a case study of a client, of how they've applied this. What does this look like? So I'm really only looking at the training component. There's a lot more than just the training component. So the first thing they did in their company was they implemented some on-demand, some e-learning, and it was implemented across the whole company. So this is a very fast-growing vendor, and I'll talk about their results in a moment. And what they did was they said, no one really gets this notion of how channels work. You know, we're a direct-centric company. So we're going to make everybody in the company go through this, and we're going to have a level of testing on this, so at least we can get some common nomenclature going. The next thing they did was they created what was called a field guide. So this is the life cycle, partner life cycle that I spoke about earlier on. And what they did is they assembled all the different pieces they had into some sort of workflow, integrated into Salesforce, and then what they did is they actually created some testing. So we heard earlier on about, you know, compensation and you know, I think do 2 blue sheets. In this case, if they didn't pass the testing on how to use the field guide, there was compensation effects on them. So you could imagine they had about a 98% pass rate on exactly how to manage the field. And then what we did with them was, so this was a global project. So I believe the world only differs in 3 ways: in scale, in maturity, and in culture. They're the 3 ways I think markets differ. And so the way that we applied this with them was we said, okay, let's try and pick the 80% that's the same. So in the case of an example of scale might be, in the US you need 10 engineers to be trained in this product. In Australia, it's a smaller market, you may only need 3. That's an example of how you localise it at a local market level. And then what they did is they created a professional development curriculum because they recognised the importance of, and I'll explain their context in a moment, of professional development. They embedded to their onboarding, they embedded to their compensation. So they in fact, you had to get what was called 20 learning credits a year, right, to be able to progress through the... First of all, you had to get 10 learning credits to stay at the same level, 20 learning credits, past learning credits to be able to progress in terms of some career progression. They had a whole management reinforcement program, so all the managers were trained, and it was a multi-year curriculum. And this is sort of some of the different modules that they had. So let's talk about outcome here. This was a fast-growing software vendor that was a category leader that was recognised that it was always not going to be a category leader. And so the metrics that they were, and that was true. You know, very quickly, very soon they had a lot of competitors and a lot better product out there. But they managed to, in fact, they managed to grow their market share through this period because they really heavily, amongst other things, they very heavily invested in this area of channel professional development. 78% of their revenue, about 80% of their revenue comes through indirect sales channels. They have a larger direct sales team than they have an indirect sales team because they've got to have the customer touch, but the fulfillment and the activity is still through the partners. The consequence was, you know, there was shorter deal time, there was average deal sizes going up, all the metrics that one would look for as a result. And so this guy got funded globally, certain regions have adopted, and they've had tremendous success. This was built from inception to completion in just under 6 months. So I recognise it is the end of the day. You know, I wish I had another little science experiment that I could do with you now, because I think we need something like that in the room at, you know, as we get late in the day. But let me tell you, what have I covered so far? What I've said is channels are an economic strategy. I don't think wherever you go around the world, indirect sales channels are increasing in importance, and so therefore, by definition, an investment is required. Professional development in the area of channels offers, I think, a very high return on investment, because most of your competitors today aren't doing it. There lies the opportunity. And it allows, some of the things that will drive is higher partner contribution rates, better partner investment, those sorts of different things. I spoke about the 5 competencies, the professional development competencies: life cycle management, channel business acumen, influence, partner planning, and situational leading and coaching of channel partners. And then I gave you an example. So if this is something that's important to you, if you see an opportunity to be able to accelerate your growth through channel partners, and this is an area where you feel that you would like to invest in your people, then I suggest that you take the following 4 steps. The first is just to do an audit of your overall, what I call, partner engagement system. So I've really only spoken about the skills today and a little bit of the processes. There are other elements of it that are required. Once you've done the audit, staying more along the skills track, right, then define what I call the competencies. And I'm talking about the professional competencies. There's stuff that you can leverage off the shelf, right, integrate it into your hiring practices, make decisions on hire and fire, all those sorts of different things, but do it more as a science. Only a small, maybe half the room put your hand up when it came to direct sales and competencies. I'd only want to ask the question around indirect channels because I think I know what the answer is going to be. Once you've done that, then be a bit more prescriptive for the field. Give them something that's integrated, hopefully into CRM or PRM, the partner version of that, right? Some sort of playbook. Make sure it's got some workflow, and let them know what it is, right? That you're measuring them on all the things that are leading indicators in terms of managing the territory, and then finally, right, work out what the professional development roadmap needs to look like. This is not a huge investment, relatively speaking, to what the opportunity exists today. As I said, many of your competitors aren't doing it today, so if this is something that's important, it really does give you the opportunity for competitive advantage. So on that note, I'll hand it back to Bill, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Braham.